And we're live with our 197th, is that correct, episode of Absolute AppSec? Okay. I'm Ken Johnson at CK Tricky on Twitter, joined by my co-host Seth Law at Seth Law on Twitter. Seth, say hi.
Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. We're super excited to be back. Ken and I were just at CactusCon this last weekend, ran a workshop, had a panel. It was all super exciting. And I'll post out a couple of, we'll post out the track itself. We will be cutting our talk out, right? Or the panel out with some interesting discussions with Mike McCabe and Andrew Wilson on application security, the future of AppSec, how it's changed in the last decade. So, take a listen or give it a watch if you would like to. Otherwise, the other announcement that we've got is Defcon Trainings are happening April 13th and 14th, I believe, April 13th and 14th in Bellevue, Washington. So up in Seattle. We will be giving our practical secure code review course there. Defcon has asked us to come again. Super excited about that as well. So if you are looking for an opportunity, this is the first open class that we've had in a minute. So if you're looking for practical secure code review training, let us know. And there's going to be certifications that are coming along with that as well. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to call that. Certified source code reviewers. I don't know, something like that, right, Ken?
I know certifications seem to be top of people's minds. So
yeah, some people like it. Here for the comic book reviews. Good. That's exactly what we're going to do. Given that the comic book store actually moved, so it wasn't next door to the Mexican restaurant like we expected. So yes, there might not be as many comic book reviews as you're looking for this time around. Otherwise, we are excited to have Sal with us today. Sal, unless Ken, is there something else that you wanted to bring up before we dive into it and do full introductions for Sal?
No, I would say CactusCon was awesome. I think you should attend if you can. They used a freemium model. So the tickets and the workshops or the talks and the workshops are all free. They have really good sponsors that make that possible. And I say freemium because if you want maybe like swag or you want like a nicer badge to hack on, because it's not just a paper one, but like, something with a motherboard, you can pay for that as well. And I think the location is great. And also what's interesting, so, in terms of web security, not a ton of web security, which I like. Like, frankly, I think we were talking about it. Like, there's only so many talks I can stomach about. Sorry to those who have talks that are like this, but, empathetic design and this, that, or the other, or, a 758th variation of a way to exploit XSS. I can only stomach so many of those anymore. So it's nice to get a little bit of, red teamy, reverse engineering, binary exploitation type stuff. So that's my take on CactusCon. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was a good time for sure. Always good to see people, especially this time of year when it's so cold out, getting down a little bit into the Southwest actually helps. So, I think from there we should dive into Sal's background. Sal Olivares is currently with Segment/Twilio, right? Sal was introduced to us by Leif Dresler, who's been on the podcast a number of times. But let's just jump into your background really quick, Sal, before we get into the article and the interesting stuff you're doing with API keys. Tell us about like what you do over at Twilio, like how you got into the industry. Let's just start there.
Yeah, no, for sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Sal. Thank you, Seth, Ken, for having me on. Like you guys mentioned, I'm in Twilio segment right now. I'm a senior software engineer in embedded. I'm part of a team that's basically in part of the security org. So doing software engineering related to like customer facing features. So SSO, SCIM, MFA, and most recently this token secret scanning revocation service that powers the partnership with GitHub. So that's what I'm working on in my day to day on that team. Small but mighty team. We're we're excited to like start off the year with the more of these security features. So this was a great way to start off the year, the security scanning partnership. Yeah, basically I started off, let's see, we mentioned Leaf, and we were joking in the pre-show about the Leaf Dreisler pipeline. You guys have so many guests on that recommended by Leaf. So yeah, Leaf reached out to me like, now it's gonna be like almost a year and a half now, where he reached out, looking, hey Sal, I think you'd be good fit for this position. So before that, I was actually at Northrop doing sort of jumping into what I'm doing now, like Node, React, TypeScript. So like I said, I'm a software engineer. Just happen to be in security work right now. So doing a lot of the TypeScript, a lot of the Node.js, a lot of the web framework stuff. That I got my start at Northrop. So like security contractor, very slow paced, much slower paced than it is now at Twilio Segment. Working in skiffs, like can't talk about what I work. No phones at the office. The dealio. And then before that, also another government contractor, Raytheon, where I actually did some security work there, but again, can't talk about that.
Come on. When is that up? Right? You want to come back on the show as soon as you're, like,
what is it, like 99 plus years after my, after I'm buried, then maybe
you can
I could talk about it. Yeah. Or whenever it's unclassified. So yeah. So yeah, and then Misty at Warp 9, you're mad. Oh, Jordan's in the chat. Thanks for watching, Jordan. Yeah, part of Warp 9 and at Northrop. So doing a lot of, like I mentioned, doing a lot of the like the cool stuff, the cool kids were doing, the Reacts, the new frameworks. So we're pretty much at Northrop, we were like sort of a consulting team for the rest of the Northrop team. So it was a really cool experience there. And yeah, that's sort of my background. It's I got to experience a lot of things like low level C at Raytheon with security work. Northrop is now my foray into like what I'm doing now: TypeScript, React, Node, and then finally here at Twilio Segment, doing that but in a security context. And I've learned a lot in the past year and a half. Like Leaf's a great mentor, team is great. So learning about AppSec, ProdSec, and I'm speaking at a security conference at B-Sides. So it's been a fun ride for me.
Which B-Sides?
This is going to be the SF B-Sides SF sometime in April. I think 22nd, 23rd. Yeah, San Francisco.
Nice. Yeah,
I'm gonna put a link in.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, they haven't quite released the schedule yet, but that's good. I mean, I think that's how we all have this path that we kind of work into. Oh, all of a sudden we're doing security work, and we do see people that come in and then move out. One of the things Ken and I were talking about this weekend was actually the team over at Twilio and Segment, right? Like it, feels like there's quite a bit of research, number one, good like product security features and research and blog posts that are coming out of the team there. Even, it almost feels like you're a follower to what happened at Netflix a few years ago, right? Like there was the Netflix team that was pretty strong, that was releasing a whole bunch of stuff. And I mean, I know they're still strong over there and still doing a lot of the same thing. But a lot of that community involvement that we all appreciate, right? Like we like to see what people are doing internally and helping others.
Yeah, I mean, shout out to our security work, like Colleen, Eric, Elliot, Leaf, especially like pushing us to do more of these like community stuff. Like our team published like 3 blog posts in the last month or so. It's all on the Twilio Segment engineering blog, but Leaf pushing us and leadership pushing us to post more blogs, talk about our team, advertise our team, and our security org and all the great work we're doing. So a big shout out to them. Yeah.
And well, maybe let's dive into the actual API stuff. I mean, we talked about APIs last week. There was, and now I'm trying to remember, right? Like, I've been to so many talks over the last, few days, and we've had so many different discussions, and I'm trying to remember exactly what we dug into last time around, Ken. Oh, it was reviewing APIs for security features, right? And actually, this is near and dear to my heart right now because I have been looking at some APIs from like client APIs and tokens and the way that people interact with them and authenticate against and are authorized against APIs is always a huge concern. But let's dive
into talking with.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I think it's just as this also segue, like when Frank was on, I mean, we talked pretty heavily about, how breaches occur. And one of those things was primarily like exposed credentials essentially. So anyways, I'll lead us in that way into this conversation. And here's the, just to highlight the link there.
Yeah. So, yeah. Thank you for linking that. That's basically the how Segment proactively protects customer API tokens. I guess I'll jump right in, right? So about a year ago, I think it all starts with the API key or token format. About a year ago, we had a pretty standard API key format. It's alphanumeric 64 characters, all random, right? No real identifiers, and it's it's really hard to like run a pattern or a regex pattern against that, right? It's a random 64 alphanumeric. There's no real identifiers there. If you want to set up like a piece of software, a pre-commit hook like Trufflehog or Git leaks, it's really hard to find. You're gonna get a lot of false positives, or you're just gonna get a lot of noise there. So about a year ago, we actually changed our API token format to match more of what like GitHub was doing. And GitHub's I'll talk about more at length, sing their praises later. They introduced a 3 letter identifier in front of the token. Pretty standard, right? Like it was GH something underscore, and then the rest of the alphanumeric 64 characters. So that was like a year ago. That was our first focus. Like, let's just shift our API key to have a segment identifier, just so it's easy to find and pattern again, and write a regex for it. So that was go ahead.
Yeah. Before we dive into it, right? Like I think people, I don't know, right? Like unless you've done something like this, looking for patterns in like key patterns in code before, you don't realize what a huge problem this is, right? Because like writing regular expressions, number one, is difficult, but number two, if there's no identifying characteristics, even if there's not GUID values are almost easier because of the dashes that are in there, right? Like at the very least, you can identify, oh, this is a UUID V4 or V2 or whatever it is very easily. But these like 64 character strings, especially when you're looking at something that has base 64 encoding or encrypted values and everything else in it, it's just like, drop that out the window because it's not going to do you any good. So we appreciate that, there's been some thought that goes into it. And I definitely do think, Microsoft and GitHub have led the way there. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt too much.
No.
That's a huge issue.
Yeah, no, it is. I'm surprised. Like, I mean, the first step is just, add an identifier to your API token. And I think like GitHub went even further, and we didn't go where they actually introduced a checksum at the end of the token, like a 32-bit checksum. So you can do offline, like immediately this is like immediately tell if it's a valid or invalid token, and not even like you don't even have to validate against it. You can like, oh yeah, that's like no good. That's just like some random string that wasn't generated from us.
So Ken, would you say that GitHub is recreating JOTs then? Is that?
You said JOTs, so
JWTs, whatever. JOTs in the RFC. We had a huge discussion on that. Sorry. I don't want to throw you off too much, Sal. I was just giving him.
No. This is great. So GitHub checksum, really cool stuff. We didn't go that far, so we still have to unfortunately make a database call to validate the token. But I'll get into that in a bit. But yeah, that was about a year ago, and it's funny. We actually made a contribution to the Git leaks project. Like submitted a PR with our pattern, and then like immediately afterwards, I don't know if this was coincidence or not, but GitHub like, hey, do you want to join our partner, like our secret scan partnership? Do you want to be a partner? So um, that was cool. They reached out. Yeah, uh, they reached out and they're like, hey, you should look into being a partner. So that was about now like a couple months ago. So uh, yeah, we're like, yeah, of course we're interested. And GitHub makes it so easy to like onboard to be a being a partner. Uh, they have great documentation. They're like, here, this is what you need to do. You need to make a secret scanning service one, and then they like just walk you through it really, really easily. So during
I
this
just want
was
to,
about
sorry,
oh,
I don't want to interrupt you too much, but I just want to let everybody to know that I paid Sal no money to come on here and say these
that's right.
things.
Well,
So,
okay, you're part of the
anyway,
security team, right?
yeah,
All right.
exactly. So I just want to be
Yeah,
very
yeah.
clear. All these nice things
This
have
is
nothing to do with me. So,
yeah. I'm focusing on GitHub. We're also working with GitLab as well because they also have a partnership. But like GitHub has it so like easily laid out. Like I was saying earlier, like I'm gonna sing their praises because they have great documentation on this, great blog posts on this, making great strides in the secret scanning space, like giving more and more features to public repos. I think one of the most recent one was like you're able now to see the validity of like tokens, like if they were valid or not, and they've got revoked. Um,
yeah.
so that was that was one of the most recent announcements, I guess. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I was not paid. This is just the good work. Just highlighting the good work and how easy they made it for us to onboard to their partnership. Um, yeah. So it was like this was what now? This was October now. We're starting to build this secret scanning service, and it's pretty. It's if let's see, I might drop a link later, but there was essentially evolves to GitHub runs regular expression patterns, or your regular expression pattern in this case segments was it starts with I think SGP. I think that's the identifier, and we supply that to GitLab, and whenever or GitHub, and whenever they come across it in a public repo, they send over a request to an endpoint that we set up. And this endpoint is powered by a standard Node.js service on our end. And it, whenever I was testing it earlier, and yeah, there you go. Thank you. So yeah, the user pushes a change, runs a regular expression. GitHub runs a regular expression, sends a matches to a public endpoint. We validate the tokens, and this is where having that checksum would be pretty neat, where we can like immediately just throw away tokens that are just not we're not interested in. But we do hit a database. We validate that token, and if it's valid, we revoke it. Right? We sort of saw what other partners were doing, and a lot of them just auto revoke it. Some of them just warn you. Some of you give you the option to like, do you want to warn or auto revoke? We went like, hey, if it's out there, if it's in the public repo, it's compromised. No matter if you can rewrite all the history you want, if you have that SHA WAN hash, there's ways of getting it. I think even in the docs, it's like, yeah, like it's really hard to get rid of stuff. So just consider any credential you commit to a public repo as, yeah, just rotate it. And I think that's what.
So I'm interested to hear about like what the kind of the public or the developer reaction to that has been. Has there been any pushback on, revoking those tokens, or has it just been thumbs up as far as the user experience?
What I've seen, it's like auto there was a Hacker News post about like the secret scanning stuff, and my general the general sentiment that I got was, hey, someone accidentally committed a token. AWS, by the way, is the most like the tokens that are the most I
Sought
guess,
after.
yeah, sought after, leaked on GitHub. So the general sentiment was like, hey, I accidentally committed this. Thank God that they, caught it and revoked it for me. So that's the general sentiment. There hasn't been, I haven't seen any pushback. There's questions of maybe, what if I want to commit a token on purpose for like testing purposes, and maybe it's a test token. I haven't really come across that. So to answer your question, Seth, like I haven't seen or like read any pushback from developers for this auto revoke. Like a lot of the partners are doing it. And if push comes to shove, a customer doesn't want this feature, we have mechanisms to disable it for their their resources if they want to. So behind a feature flag. So yeah, there no real pushback there. So other services just warn you, but the email might not be seen. We rather just play it safe. I go into like, hey, would you rather have a security incident where your tokens being exploited, or a security instance where the solution is just rotate it and bring the service back online? So that was our line of reasoning when choosing between like auto revoking and just warning. And it's
I mean, in general, I start to think about it, right? Like the damage that can be done within, like, okay, the time the email goes out or the notification goes out, and when somebody can actually act upon it, right? If you don't do the auto revoke. So for me as a security person and ex-developer, it does feel like that's kind of a given. But I am a little surprised that there is that option there to, oh, I just want to notify you instead. Yeah, but
it's it's up to the customer or the user, the customer, how they want to do it. Like as a developer, I'm like, hell no, I don't want any of my tokens out there. Just revoke it for me if I make a mistake. And yeah, it's like when researching this project, I came across a good paper that I linked in the blog about a North Carolina like state university research team, like using, if you scroll a little more up in the intro, yeah, they link, although it's a little outdated, it's like 2019, so not a lot of not sure how, like, I'm sure GitHub has improved like the security stuff, but there used to be like you're able to use the API to find like tokens, and use like GitHub's own API to run like a regular expression. And I think there was one where it's like there was like a stat like the time to index these secrets is like 20 to 4 minutes. So like there's plenty of room for, by the time that you see the email and the secret hits the repo, there's plenty of time for attacker to exploit it, or if it's an AWS key, run up a big bill perhaps. So
well, and I mean, like it's a known problem, right? It's not like hackers or like, malicious actors haven't been scanning code for tokens for the last, I mean, how long, Ken, right? Like you guys wrote your AWS framework how many years ago to figure out what you could actually do with tokens?
Yeah, Weird Al, I don't even remember when. It was a while ago, but I know that we've been talking about like DevOps talks with Chris Gates, Carnal Lineage. We did those back as far as, I don't know, 2012, 2013. And I can honestly say, like, it's funny too, talking about small worlds, when Chris and I were talking about his work at Uber, which I don't know, I'm talking about, he's not, so whatever, sue me. At Uber, they wanted to revoke tokens, and that was, so I think at the time they were using like some customized truffle hog to search, and then some other customizations to like get rid of those tokens. But anyways, he was telling me about all this as I was joining GitHub, and about this kind of, or after I joined GitHub, to kind of get me to like talk to the ProdSec team about, hey, can we have something to revoke tokens? And it just happened to be that they were on the path to something along these lines. But the big ask, the one that really was, I think, the kind of the big deal, was like a custom regex pattern versus known, just like known AWS patterns, known this, known that. And so I advocated a lot internally for that too, but that ultimately had nothing to do with anything I did. Anyways, point is like, it's just funny because like I've seen this evolution for almost 10 years now, or longer, where this has become a real problem, and seeing how we've everybody's been trying to solve this. Long story, but
yeah. And I wonder too, right? And I don't know, Sal, if you guys have seen this. I know there's like the ability to scan private repositories as well, right? That's always an ask from, at least from consulting perspective, as I'm looking at code, and it's provided to me. Like this is where it gets interesting, because I was like, ugh, if I had those regular expressions that GitHub has or GitLab is using, it would make that go a lot quicker, right? Just yesterday, scanning one of these like API code bases, and it flags, right, like key equals something from out of JavaScript, but it's like it's not even a real key, right? It's not a decryption key or anything like that. It's just a key value pair, and they just happen to name it key. But it's a real problem with those static analyzers. So I wonder if there's going to be some at least release of things like your regular expression. Is that one of the things that you've done?
The release of the like, hey, here's the pattern.
Just the pattern format. Right?
Yeah, one of the reasons, or one of the ways we did that, is just contributing back to these open source projects. Like, or it's like, hey, here's I know, like I'm going back to Git leaks, but they have pretty much a database within the code, like a config of basically Twilio, AWS, segment now, public keys, like formats. So if you wanted to, you could just take those. It's open source, so it's that's a good starting point, right? To get a list of the most common or most popular token formats. Definitely, like I think maybe even Trufflehog has some as well available. So that's good point.
I mainly wanted to highlight where those regular expressions are if people are searching for them, or if they haven't used GitLeaks or Trufflehog in the past. It's a good starting spot. Obviously, you're going to run into custom stuff, right? Like you're going to custom keys, or right, like the way that Django or whatever other format or other framework you've picked, the way they generate keys may or may not be very easily to see that.
Right. And these tools are usually run maybe in like CI, CD, even like pre-commit hooks, and you could easily bypass them too if you want to. So that's it's not a bulletproof, but it's definitely a way forward.
Cool. Yeah. Let's see. What was my other questions there? We talked about Warner Revoke, right?
Yeah. That was a big like striking the balance between just it's like user security, or like security and like user experience, and in our case, auto revoke made the most sense. So, and then the API token pattern. I talked in the beginning about this, about adding that identifier, the SGP, the standing for segment public API token, and just sort of how and this dives a little deeper into how we made that migration, and it you can imagine a token table, pretty standard token table holding all your tokens. We just add a new column, like, hey, this is a version, this is gonna be version 2, and if you wanted to make a change in the future, it's version 3, so on and so forth. Surprisingly, in our code base, it was really easy to make this update. So there isn't really much to take away here, other than, hey, for us, this was a column add. This was just revving the version and then updating little relevance pieces of the backend to sort of accept this prefix.
Cool. Cool.
token. So
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, this should be the first step.
Yeah.
This should be the first step. And yeah, what about
Yeah,
enough?
let me put this up on the screen if you don't mind. But I need to like take that out of this view. So sorry, guys.
Nope, you're
Otherwise,
good.
it's it's a little hard to see Sal. So I'm gonna put Sal in solo. There we go.
Oh,
Sorry,
yeah.
Sal.
No worries. What about when enough valid keys of these new formatted keys get out there and someone reverse engineers a decryption? Is that possible still? Enough valid keys. Oh, okay. Like like generating, like finding like how these are generated. Oh,
Yeah, I think
they're
that's
talking
the
about trying to
question.
reverse the algorithm used to generate tokens, and if that could net you maybe the pattern you need to generate them, perhaps.
well, I trust whoever's writing these like libraries, that these crypto libraries we use, are smart enough. Because I just use them. I use these like the hardened crypto libraries in Node. So I hope someone smarter than me has had the forethought to make sure this is not possible. Sorry to sidestep that question.
No, we can answer that too as security professionals. It'd be pretty, if you're using a pretty common standard library, modern. I don't know if it's encryption so much as maybe a hashing. I suspect maybe more of a hashing routine than
Mhm.
an encryption or decryption. Because obviously, there's nothing to encrypt or decrypt of value there, so it's just probably just the actual token format, which is probably a hash. And in that case, if you're using modern standards, I mean, good luck. Good luck finding out. You would need a huge sample set too to even begin trying to even go that route. I just think it's probably not super feasible. It's the gist of it. Anything you want to add there, Seth?
Yeah, I always go back to generating those and what the value is of reverse engineering that format, right? Most of the time with API tokens, there's like some sort of random function that's happening, right? It's not necessarily you're encrypting a value or you're decrypting a value. At most, it would be, okay, can I predict what's going to happen, right? If there's going to be some sort of a collision, or predicting what that next token value is going to be, which I mean that is a real threat, right? Like if you are using insecure random, that's probably the biggest issue I'd be looking for there. Otherwise, I don't know if you could get much else out of it, right? Because most likely it's random, and then you're pulling up some string of 64 characters and then using that to generate the token, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
It possible, but very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Brandon, for the question.
Yeah, I mean, as far as generating the tokens, that's that might be an abuse pattern that Segment could look at, right? Like if somebody comes in, they have an account, and all of a sudden they're generating hundreds of thousands of tokens, that may necessarily, that's probably going to be obvious.
We have rate limits. That thing's locked down for sure. But yeah, no, it'll be tough.
Yep.
I mean, I like theoretical conversations like that too. It's the questions like that. So it spurs good conversation. But yeah, I think it's probably pretty difficult to do. But yeah,
For sure.
I mean, my question, I guess, too, is like, I don't know that you can share, actually, you have shared some metrics here. Sorry, never mind.
Yes.
Yeah, I missed that part. Okay, let's talk. You want to walk us through some of the metrics that you discovered?
You want me to
yeah.
show, let me drop. Should I put them back up there?
Yeah. Sorry for
no worries. No
ruining
worries.
the screen share.
Gosh, Ken,
try to MC or
super professional over
around.
here. Right?
I know. I guess I'm getting fired. Take it out of my bonus, my non-existent bonus.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, if you guys are curious, that's like the metric, the email that gets sent. If you guys are curious, like what gets sent to the customer, metadata given to us by the secret scanning partner. So
Yeah.
Um,
I also like that you are following the crocs and socks of application security. You've got like an audit trail there for the suspicious activity. It's
yes,
awesome. Yep.
please check your
Good.
audit trail.
Yes.
We can never guarantee that, we revoke, like, this process happens, within seconds. I timed it last time. It was like 15 seconds from like me committing to it getting revoked. So it's really quick, but you never know. You always want to check your audit trail just in case. But yeah, metrics. Um, Leaf actually wrote a really good blog on security metrics, and it was a big focus of our team to improve security metrics for our services across the board. And this also, applicable to new services as well. Like we really want to define the metrics even before, in the planning stage. Like, what are we going to be looking for? And in this case, like, we wanted to know, you know, first off, like, what's the origin of these exposed tokens? Like, we have GitHub and GitLab. GitLab being onboarded really soon. Like, where are they coming
So
from?
would you say GitLab is more insecure than GitHub? Is that?
I wouldn't say we haven't onboarded yet, so we don't have the metrics to back that just yet. So we'll see. Once we get more data, it's curious to see, like, and maybe it might be like a popularity contest, right? Like, GitHub's more popular, naturally we just get more exposed tokens from GitHub. Maybe I'm just guessing.
Well, it may
Sal,
change
can we
in a
have you
few
on every
weeks.
podcast?
Yeah, it may change in a few weeks when Ken leaves, right? Like, you'll see an uptick in exposed tokens because he's no
Okay,
longer
More
there.
people will use the platform. No, don't say that. You went a different way than I expected with that. That's awesome. Great.
Yeah, so it's not a GitHub shill. Just, I enjoy the service. I like it. It's cool. The ratio of revoked tokens to false positives. So this is an interesting one because during our threat modeling, security folks, we do threat modeling for anything that deals with sensitive data, tokens included. We do a threat model. So like, one was like, could we like theoretically overload this service by like generating a bunch of fake segment tokens? So we wanted to see the ratio of revoked to false positives to maybe detect something there. So yeah, and then which workspaces, which customers have the most revoked tokens, just for curiosity's sake. Like, if we needed to contact the customer, like, hey, your tokens are being revoked at a high rate, something's going on. So yeah, we use Segment to collect these metrics. We drink our own champagne and use Segment to collect these metrics. So whenever a token comes in that's valid or invalid. So here we have a try. This is a snippet from the code base. So you have a user ID. It's just like who generated this metric. In this case, the system did. There's no particular user. It's just the service itself generated this event. What type of event? This is an exposed public API token, and then just some properties. This is just basically metadata from the secret scanning partner. So they give us, the origin, GitHub, the prefix of the token, the commit, like what the source was. Like, is it the commit? Is it a PR? Is it an issue? Like, where it was found, and the type of token, as well as the URL to that token. So we use this data in our email that you saw before. So this is where that email information comes from. Is just this track event in segments. So we just, if it's invalid, we mark it as invalid. If it's revoked, it's revoked. And I think we have one other state that if for some reason we wanted to disable auto revoking and just go to warn, there's a status for that too. So there's and there's not, we just launched this, so there's not a lot of data yet to like draw any significant or conclusions. Like, we just launched this. Also, the fact that these API tokens are mainly just generated by business tier customers. I think like it's gated from like team or paying customers. So we don't expect to have too much revoked tokens. So we just have to wait and see as the metrics come in. And
I'm interested to see how that, like, what the actual numbers there are, right? Like, I mean, I don't know how much you guys like be able to release or want to release, but just in general, it would be interesting to see what that looks like. And then also that, that threat model is fascinating to me, right? Because I mean, that's where I start to go is, oh, like, okay, what happens when somebody generates a whole bunch of SGBP tokens?
Mhm.
How do you respond to that, right? Like, hey, there's a submission to a, whatever service that is. Are you
Mhm,
overloading
mhm.
the customer with emails that it's revoking these tokens, or it's noticing, or what's going on?
Yep.
Yeah, it's interesting problems that you run into there.
Yeah, so yeah, the biggest concern was that thing, like, if for some reason they wanted to overload we internally we called this the exposed, uh, token service.
Mhm.
Um, and we have rate limits in place. We have like ensuring that we're not. And also, I imagine GitHub also has some sort. I might not be right, but maybe GitHub says something to prevent these masks. But GitHub only sends us two at a like I think two tokens in one request at a time. Um,
Hmm.
so we're not going to get like a huge like mega request from GitHub. So we're able to like uh, take those in pretty easily, rate limit them as well, and also I'm trying to think like what we have in place. Also, we have also and also the fact that we have the public endpoint behind a GitHub like only GitHub. We only accept requests from GitHub via
Yeah.
some signature some header security. They basically put a public key, I think, in their headers too, and signature, and then we validate that to ensure that request is from GitHub. So that's one other way we protect that public endpoint. But yeah, if Seth, you bring up good points in terms of like threat model, like we if they wanted to,
Well,
yeah,
yeah. And but I mean, this goes back. I mean, I know you've got Gvon over there, right? Like from a threat
it's
modeling
even
perspective, right? But like this always goes back to this is why you do that threat model, right?
yes,
Because
yep,
my first inclination wasn't necessarily to think about the denial of service aspect and like someone crafting a whole bunch of keys. Um, so it's satisfying from my end to see that, oh, you guys sat down and you had that discussion and actually
oh
like
yeah.
worked through what that looks like in order to identify, all right, this is probably the biggest risk that we're going to run into. What happens when the service goes down, a key gets exposed, and all of a sudden it's out there until the service can come back up and the replay can happen and what that looks like. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good,
G
yeah.
yeah, Jeevan and team, like I said, the leadership and the security org in general, like, these are the things we think about when we're planning, the services. Like anything, we have a checklist that we run through, and I can't, off the top of my head, I don't know what's in that checklist, but if you hit like if you check yes for any of the questions, it's like, oh, we need a threat model, security engineer gets assigned to your like plan, and they walk through it with you. You explain it. Earlier in the blog, you showed a sequence diagram. They dissect that sequence diagram, like, okay, like, what can go wrong between the user and GitHub and the service. So and I think we used like the stride model as well,
Okay. Yep.
spoofing, tampering,
Yeah, yeah.
and so on and so forth. So yeah,
A lot of
that's yeah.
acronyms in security.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Stride,
That's
dread, take your
yep.
pick on the threat model side.
Yeah, so, yeah, it's my like, this is my first, like, job with a threat modeling, system, so it's been awesome to think about things like, "Oh, yeah, crap, you're right, I need to, take this attack in mind," so, um, yeah, 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 Jeevan
Did
is
you I mean, since you're kind of, I mean, it sounds like you did some level of security things, I mean, earlier in the government work, but you're back in full swing working with the security team, building security functionality. So I guess my question would be, how does security impact has it impacted the way you develop software or the way you think about things as you plan and strategize what you're going to build and how you're going to build it? um I
yeah.
mean, or is it sort of like, no, like we've got a good team. I still don't, or I've
No.
always thought about it this way, or whatever it might be.
Yeah, this is like I've been a software engineer for see, I graduated 2017. I took no security classes. Like, I don't think in the curriculum there was any class available to me to be like, here's secure coding. Like, here's how to securely, write software. There might have been like a lesson on it, right? And that's the extent of it. So, starting my career, like okay, yeah, like I did not think of these things, like like, oh, thinking like an attacker, how they can exploit what the code I write. Had a little bit at Raytheon, like I mentioned, but it was, jump onboarding at Twilio slash segment. No, these are the things that are at the forefront of my mind. If I don't think about them, they will be called. I don't want to be called out there in the threat model, like with my pants down. Like, how come you did? Like, it's just like I want to impress the security team. I want to like think about these things and make sure they're in the front of my mind when I'm coming up with this plan. So yes, to answer your question, yes, definitely the shift in my way of thinking of like, oh man, I didn't even know that was possible. I didn't even know you could spoof that. The whole, don't even get me started on cloud security. The whole, like, it's a rabbit hole, like that, I'm just getting exposed to it. Like, IAM roles, like securing your AWS environment. Oh,
we talked about it on the panel that Seth had mentioned earlier at CactusCon, where it was kind of like, it's like you as a software engineer, you have these things that you either there's varying levels of care or concern or even knowledge around what, how to like bake security into the software you're developing. But then there's this whole other world that emerged where now software engineers are also deploying infrastructure.
Yes.
And now you've got to know CIDR notation. You've got to know networking. You've got to know and also just the controls and what can go wrong and how to make it auditable for the cloud side of things too. And then it's like, man, that job just got it's like they just tried to make like forget 10x, like 100x engineer, and to do it all right. And it's like, okay, well, that's not going to work. So
yeah, Ken,
anyways, it's a very opinionated take on it, but yeah.
That's you hit you just spot on. Like my job, like now I'm like, oh crap, now I gotta think. I rewrite use Terraform to deploy these AWS stuff, like for the exposed poppy servers. Now I gotta think about like making sure the Terraform I wrote is good, like it's secure and it like getting deployed into the AWS environment like correctly. It's like, oh man, like it opens up a whole other like line of worries. Like so luckily we have great cloud security, great security folks to make sure.
Of all the places to actually cut your teeth on, that segment's probably one of the safest, right?
Yes. Yes.
Given what I see in the general industry, like you guys are, yes.
It's funny.
It's a much different environment. Yeah.
Yeah. Cause Leaf said earlier, what did he say? He said, Netflix was Netflix was definitely one of the teams we looked to for inspiration when thinking about our team direction in the early days of our security program. But what's kind of funny that to me now is that it feels like just objectively Twilio / Segment is the new Netflix as it looks. I mean, as it appears to be building a lot of things, putting out a lot of things, and influencing the direction that a lot of us are taking. So congrats, you're now the new Netflix of security.
Well, thank you. I hope Leaf's listening and is happy about that. And can't discount the fact that we have great, I'm going to say it again, GitHub, great blog resources. We're learning a lot from them, so we're learning from our peers as well. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's funny that also, like, I was just thinking about, you touched on the fact that like when you went to school, nobody talked about this stuff. Maybe there was like one day where it was briefly brought up, but it's just funny to me that, and only because we've talked about it on the podcast before we were trying to figure out like what kind of education is given to software engineers these days. To just get a little bit of knowledge on like, hey, just if nothing more than like, hey, people are definitely going to attack you. Like that's going to happen. So how do they do it? Well, check out these resources and probably try to get ahead of it. Nothing like that we were able to hear of.
Nothing. And
No, yeah. Yeah, it seems like the only security that you get is like, oh, this is how you like I mean, I harken back to my CS days and it was like, oh, this is how you implement DES and C, right? Like that was our security course. And I'm like, how many times have I talked about S boxes since I got through that course? Not a lot, right? Because I'm not a math geek, right? I'm not one of the crypto
yeah,
guys. So yeah, I'm like, that was pretty useless when it really came down to it. But it sounds like your experience was similar, right?
and not to, I'm just derailing the conversation. It's just like that's when you get that's what happens when you get a CS degree and not like and want to go into software, right? That's
Mhm.
CS is its own thing, and software engineering is a whole other thing. So
Yep.
yeah,
That's a fair
that's
point.
that's probably a good reason. Um,
That's a really
uh,
fair point.
yeah,
The two are different.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and to become a software engineer, really the only path that I saw at the university is, it's a CS degree, right? That's really the the standard way, I guess. I don't know. They're like nowadays you can learn, you know, like software engineers don't need to go to school, I feel, for that. So
Well, yeah, and like there's a couple times I had volunteered to do training for a day at like those coding camps, but
mhm,
even those coding camps, that's like the most that they got was someone willing to volunteer a little bit of their time for like a
mhm,
half a day or a day or whatever to come in and talk to them. And I guess in a 3 month period, that's like not the worst breakdown that you could, have, but at the same time, it's like yeah, that's just kind of like people volunteering to come in and it's not really like a set thing. And so even those coding camps that arguably are the thing that are really focused on
mhm.
I would think anyways, software. I don't know, maybe you disagree, but I would think that that's the closest thing to like, yeah, getting some education in software engineering. And I don't
I
think there you see much security either.
I've seen like breakdowns of the curriculum for that. There's almost never mention of security
Hmm.
in those like class course or like, here's the schedule. There might be, some touching on it, throughout the course, but there's not like a big focus on it. Yeah.
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 I wish there
Um,
was, but hey, it's
that's what,
maybe
learn on the
that's
job. That's what I'm doing. So, yeah, yeah, yeah.
hey, if you're, this is what I'm thinking. If you're like one of those trading platforms, like software security trading platforms, you could start driving. It works. It could work for both, right? They give out some free licenses to maybe they already do this, but give out some free licenses to students, and then you get some early users of your
Mhm.
platform, and then they become software engineers, and they're going to buy a product at some point. And maybe they remember you, and everybody wins.
That's
So
right.
if you're listening and you have a trading platform and you're not doing that, maybe that'll work for you.
You come to Absolute AppSec for the business advice from
Hey man, we
Hey,
can do all the things on here. We can advocate for education and we can make some people some money at it while we're
yeah,
at it. How about that? Yeah.
exactly. So right, we've only got about 5 minutes left or so, but I did want to ask you, Sal, if
Mhm.
there was anything else that you wanted to highlight from the article. I know there's probably more that you're going to talk about at B-sides, but is there anything else that you want to highlight from the article before we close things out today?
Um, no, just really just to conclude, like, if any one of you are interested, please check out the blog post. A lot more information in there. There's RFCs there's an RFC for this like secret like API token format. So there's definitely people thinking about like the future and like how like we maybe standardize API keys to
Hmm.
make this sort of stuff easier, this detection and prevention of leak secrets easier. So check out that RFC. It's interesting. And yeah, just hey, like if you have a security org and you're not onboarded to GitHub's secret scanning partner ship, it's really easy to get done. GitLabs as well. So highly recommend doing that. And yeah, if you want to learn more, just take a look at the blog post. Come check me out at B-sides SF. So um, yeah, that's all I got.
Oh, it's all
Awesome.
good. I did post up that secret token URI scheme as well.
Yes.
That I actually haven't seen that before, right? So I'm opening it up now. Um,
Yeah,
but
that one's
yeah, that's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah, it's a I don't know how much traction it'll get, but it's a step forward in maybe standardizing this stuff. And who knows? Yeah, like everyone's just there isn't yeah um, isn't I mean I guess 64 characters is pretty standard from what I've seen, but there is no real API token standard um, other than um, other than what GitHub's trailblazing with their prefix. So
Yeah.
yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the future holds.
Yeah, it would be
Yeah.
interesting to see like how that actually translates, because it does look like they're using some of the like GUID values inside of that secret token format, which I mean, if you've never played with UUID, formats as well, um, it's a pretty interesting way to actually identify tokens and have like specific dates associated with a token that's being generated. I know other services go other directions, right? Was one of those that's fairly easy to use because there's libraries that support UUID all over the place,
Mhm.
right? But I mean, I always kind of go back to that as well. Unless you are an org that's taking, that is checking all of the security boxes, you probably don't want to be generating your own random token values. Because one small, to Brandon's point earlier, like one small miss on the token generation, like using insecure random, and all of a sudden people can predict what those are going to be, and they've taken over your API, and you're showing up on Hacker News or whatever else.
Oh man,
Yeah, UUID
that's
with a little
scary.
salt. Yeah, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Ken, do you have any other questions before we close things out today?
Not a question, just more so, appreciation for you coming on the podcast. I don't know when B-Sides SF is, maybe Seth or I will make it out or both, and watch your talk and just generally just hang out with others there. I'm sure there's always a lot of good people to go network with at B-Sides SF. So I don't know. Thank you. And I guess we might see you in person. We'll see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, thank you guys for having me on. It's been a blast. Yeah, thank you, Ken, Seth, for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for coming. It's been an informative conversation from my perspective as well. Like I said, I'm living in that API space, and I think
Mhm.
a lot of us are from a testing perspective nowadays, given how architectures are built and apps are built. So
Yeah, you're
useful
not on
information to have. Yeah.
you're not on our absolute Slack, but to Seth's point there, like, sorry, Seth, but to Seth's point, you got a lot of good feedback in our Slack. So everyone's
I
very
am part of it.
appreciative of you.
I'm lurking
Oh,
in
you are
there.
part of it.
So
Okay, cool.
yeah, I'm
Awesome.
somewhere. I'm like lurking in there. Like I've been lurking for the past like ever since I was invited. I'm
I'm
somewhere
gonna
in there.
find you. I'm gonna find you. No, I found you. Here we go. All right,
Yeah.
cool. All right.
So besides SF, before we close out though, anywhere else that people could reach out to you or find you
Um,
if they want to talk?
yeah, I'm pretty incognito on the internet. Really, the only thing I have is my Twitter and my website. So Twitter, like it's some obscure handle 0x102c. Really hard to find me. But yeah, you can reach out there if you have any questions. Check out the blog post. Check me out at B-Sides. I don't know when the schedule is going to drop, but check me out there. And yeah, that's
Sweet. Well, now we found you on Twitter, so we're gonna tweet all the things out about you. So
thank
um,
you.
And I
sweet.
pinged you
All
in
right.
our Slack channel, so now everybody knows
That's who you are.
you're
Yeah.
there and what
Perfect.
your handle is. So,
Cool.
Awesome. I'll jump in there later today.
Sweet.
sweet.
All right. Appreciate it. Thanks everybody for listening today and the interactions. And yeah, join Slack. DM me if you want a t-shirt. We'll put you on the list for the next round that's going out.
Perfect.
All right. Thanks everybody.